7 o'clock. Call the meeting to order. Thank you to everyone for attending. Start the meeting by introducing our newest member, Colleen Roy in the corner, and Beth Coltrera, who is our new admin. We welcome them both. Beth is taking over for Joanne, and we've been working a little bit, and so excuse any hiccups because her schedule and my schedule have been different for the summer in terms of being able to connect in person. So once we have a month or so to kind of connect better, we'll be able to end up a little bit better on the same page.
They already sitting here?
Yep.
Everybody, turn that over. So the first item on the agenda is reorg. And so do I have any nominations for officers? No, number 3, reorg.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was gonna say, hearing none, we don't have any officers.
I nominate John Stevens for chairperson.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, so we need to deal with that first. I have a motion and a second to nominate me as chairman. I don't know how if you want to modify that.
No, I
Or
would
do we
discuss
just-
it.
Okay, discussion? Yeah.
I think this year it's particularly important that we have someone as skilled as John in this slot because this is going to be the first year with Beth taking over as administrator, and Beth is just learning the job, and she has to fill very large shoes of Joanne, who did a lot of the work for us. It was Joanne did an incredible job, and I think that it's really important that this year we have someone as skilled as John in this position to help us do the right things.
I concur.
Here.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried.
I also, as for vice chair, I think that following that same line, I think it's particularly important that we get someone who really can backstop John and who knows the workings of the committee. So I nominate Paul Scarlett. Paul, would you do the job?
I'd be willing to do the job, yes.
I would second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried. So he's vice chairman. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we nominate Ken Holberger for treasurer. He's got way more experience than I've had. I've had to rely on his assistance a few times over the course of the past year. I think we'd be crazy not to leverage his expertise, which is known not only here in town, but throughout the state. So I nominate Ken.
A motion for Ken as treasurer. Of a second. Any discussion?
Yes. My only discussion point is I would, again, reiterate my desire to learn more about it. And I know Ken, like 2 years ago now, said he was going to take me up on that. I haven't been able to connect with him, on doing that, and he haven't followed through on giving me any of that, guidance.
He hadn't been here for a year, so you got to give him a break.
Yeah, I understand. But yeah, I'm just basically saying that I will be more than happy to learn more and be able to do that. And ideally, if two of us are looking at it, even if Ken is still the treasurer, we might catch the mistakes that happen, ahead of the town meeting.
We don't have any mistakes.
But,
We can do that.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and I know you've expressed desires for that in the past, so I think it strengthens us in case something, God forbid, happened to Ken, that, somebody's trained in the role.
Yep.
We can do that.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none. I declare the motion carried. So that's
I have a nomination for clerk. I have no idea whether or not this person is interested in the role, but I think that they would be a benefit to it, and I think it would be a great way to learn more about CPA. So I'd like to nominate Colleen for clerk, if she's interested.
Sure, I do not have a report prepared for tonight, just so we're all clear.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second for Colleen for clerk. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, I'll declare the motion carried unanimously. So Colleen is the new clerk. So for Colleen, primarily you can work with me, but a lot with Beth. But as you know, Beth is going to be doing the lion's share.
For sure.
You can review minutes with her before the meeting and that sort of thing. If you catch things that,
Yeah, whatever you need me to do, here to help.
but we're very fortunate that we, in the olden days, we didn't have administrative staff and the clerk really was the clerk. So
I remember all too well.
that was usually the hardest job on a committee. It still is on a lot to be the clerk, so. Okay, so moving on to the clerk's report. This was Joanne's last minutes, and I believe these were from her last meeting, and we have not had a meeting because we didn't meet
In May for town meeting.
in May because of town meeting, and then we didn't meet in June. So
Where's that coming from?
Me,
she sent these out once quite some time ago. Yep.
I'm the one presenting.
Hey, thank you.
That's all, because Ken asked.
I'm sorry, I missed all of it. Do I have a motion on the minutes of April 27th?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'm just gonna abstain though from this
Okay.
one.
Declare the motion carried. I don't know that, I mean, we've asked this because we had that problem with historical, and everybody's like, always says, I think we asked, and
It doesn't matter.
it's not critical. and
It's not.
And it's, especially since we have more than enough.
Yeah.
But it's always like these gray areas that we're, kind of like, well, what's a quorum? If you only have 4 people on your committee, attending, and there's 7 appointed, it's the 4 that you have.
Yeah.
So, okay, our guest of the hour, Beth, who's gonna be are you gonna both present if you wanna introduce yourselves in
Do the
case
treasure-
somebody
Just point order,
might
treasurer
not.
report.
He's my emotional support trustee.
Do you want to do treasure report?
No, because I want Beth as, I need to move quickly. We'll come back to that. Sorry.
Good evening, Beth Schreiber, Director of the Grafton Public Library. I'm here with a CPC funding request that I'm hoping to get on the town meeting warrant. As you know, the library has gone through a major renovation and expansion. We had budgeted $16.6 million for the project and gotten a grant of $7.4 million from the state of Massachusetts to cover the costs. And our construction company came in fairly low. We picked the low bidder, and we thought we had plenty of contingency money for anything that might go wrong. We knew that we had an underground oil storage tank from when the library was heated with oil, but we didn't know that there were 2 other underground soil tanks on the property. I believe it was property that had been purchased for the project. So most of our contingency money was eaten up with getting rid of all that dirty dirt and removing those underground storage tanks. It was brought to our attention early in the construction project by the roofers that the cupola was in need of attention. And it had undergone a restoration and preservation project 20 years ago, give or take, with funding from Mass Historic Commission to do some remedial work and repair it. And at that time, they actually removed the whole thing, fixed it, and brought it back, just like the Grinch and the Christmas tree. So we were aware, I think by January 2020, that the cupola was deteriorating because of age and weather, and thought we had plenty of money to go ahead and make repairs to it. Most of that, again, contingency got eaten up with taking care of the dirty dirt on the project. So we reopened the building, things went great for about a year, and then last fall, we started experiencing some leaking into the newly restored historic reading room, which was the main reading room facing the common. So if you go into that room now, you'll see that there's a patch on the ceiling where there's some ceiling bits and paint kind of, destroyed from water getting into the cupola and seeping down through the attic and ceiling. And I've got some photos that I sent of that. We engaged insurance company for repair, but of course they're not going to come out and fix it until they know that it's not going to leak again, which makes perfect sense. We don't want to throw money away. And then we started looking at what we would need to do to make repairs to the exterior of the cupola. It's kind of the first couple of feet. If you go outside and look at the top of it, it's capped with a beautiful copper piece, and it's, I think, six-sided with wooden louvers to allow light and air to get in. And it has drainage. So it's intended, the design of it is intended that water can come in, but then water should flow out. And what's happening is there's rotting underneath. There's soldering that needs to be repaired. That are creating pinholes that are allowing the water to get into the building instead of draining off properly to the roof. So we went back to the architect who did the restoration 20 or so years ago, David L. King. The capital campaign agreed to pay for him to do the preliminary work, the drawings and the photos and all of that, so that we could prepare a grant for Mass Historic Commission. So he did all the drawings, got an engineer, got an estimate, $218,228 was the total estimate for the repair and restoration of the cupola. So we wrote a grant to Mass Historic Commission asking them to fund 50% of that cost, $109,114. And it turns out that they don't cover things like the building permit, contingency, or contractor. The actual architect fees aren't covered. They'll cover the construction and the paint and the wood and all of that, and I think even the sign that says that it's their project. So they granted us $70,000, which is fantastic, but it didn't meet the whole amount that we needed. So I brought all this information to the Board of Library Trustees as I was applying for the Mass Historic Commission grant, and they agreed to front half of the money, the $109,000, $114,000. So my hope was the Board of Trustees would pay half out of state aid, and Mass Historic Commission would pay half through their grant program. But Mass Historic presented a shortfall of $39,000 and change. So I had told the board that I would, because this fit all the criteria for a historic preservation project, that I would come to Community Preservation Committee and see if they would help contribute to the cost of this project. So the proposal that I wrote was to ask for a third funding from Mass Historic, because I have that grant secured, a third funding from the Board of Library Trustees, and another third from CPC. And then you have this 200 or so pages of email or paper, if you printed it out, explaining all of the repair work that would need to be done, with photos, with letters of support. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I have had an initial meeting with the architect and William Blake to go over exactly what his process would be and how much he would need to remove. He's well aware of all the requirements for historic preservation because this is his area of expertise and he's worked on these kinds of grants before. So, we're not replacing it with laminate. It will be all wood, it will be historical colors. He's also going to help us develop a preservation plan going forward so that I, or whoever is in this position in 20 years, doesn't have to come back and ask for a large chunk of money. So in 20 years, the cost has about doubled. So that's going to happen again in 20 years, and we don't want to do that. It would be better to build this into the library's budget, to ask Capital Campaign for money, to have the board help pay for it, to have it, just be taken care of, even if it's $5,000 to $8,000 a year over the next 20 years, so that we're not asking for 200 or
That'd be
400,000.
maintenance then.
We would make it a
Preservation,
maintenance,
restoration.
ongoing maintenance, which, I've been in this position 10 years, was aware that the cupola had been restored, but there wasn't any, 10-year, 5-year, 20-year plan for this building maintenance. And yes, we did just put $16.6 million into this new building, but that doesn't mean we're not going to touch it for another 80, 90, 100 years. It's a facility and it does need ongoing maintenance, so we will prioritize that.
One question before
Sure.
people will have questions.
Sure.
That, because I did see, and that's my red flag on anything is I see taxes, because I know that accounting will catch it too if I don't.
Yep.
And for the building fees, is there any way, because my understanding is you would have to go to the Board of Selectmen for them to waive the fees. Is that something that
Yeah.
is being considered? Because if nothing else, it would give you $3,000 more buffer for something else.
I think it's $4,078. My understanding from my last department head meeting that I attended with Evan is that he had asked if we could just have a blanket for town projects. The town covers the cost of those permitting fees, so that he doesn't have to keep coming back and asking for it. So yeah, there's 4,000 right off the top of the original estimate. And I didn't go back and redo any math.
Right, but it's just like, that's something,
Yeah, and taxes, yes, we're tax exempt, so there wouldn't be taxes
right.
on anything. There's also an initial proposal that our capital campaign had agreed to pay for was we looked at, do we need to wrap this cupola to protect it from further leaking? But instead, we had the engineer and architect go up, and I think they did a little bit of, not soldering, but caulking to prevent further leaking kind of as a stopgap. And he had quoted like $13,500 for his initial work, the preliminary drawings, the time to meet, the photos, aerials, and to wrap the cupola. But then when he looked at it, he said, caulking it, I think will be enough of a stopgap. And we don't need to rent a crane, and we don't need to get the wrap for the cupola. So that cost can also kind of be deducted out of what we had expected to pay, which frees up capital campaign money really for contingency. Because, even though the architect says, this is what I think it's going to cost, right, in terms of oversight and staff power, there's always going to be an overage or something that unexpectedly goes wrong. So I do think that I won't have to come back to ask for more money, certainly not from CPC or at town meeting. But we do have the luxury of, we have this capital campaign, we have state aid money that comes in twice a year, should we run into issues and need some more money. So while my application is asking for $74,000, my gap is really around $40,000. And any amount between those two numbers would be supremely helpful and allow us to move forward. And this should have been brought to all of you in February or so that we could have moved forward with it in May. When the Historical Commission's application was due. The truth is, we still have a punch list, and I'm still doing construction almost every day. So I wasn't able to get my act together to bring this to you early. So we got the Mass Historic Commission Award, but they can't move forward until we actually have a quote and full funding. So that's why I only have an estimate. So if I am able to get your approval and then the voters to vote at October town meeting, then we can move forward with getting the quote and going out to bid and proceeding with the project next spring. That's our timeline.
Yep.
Seeing a question?
So,
Yeah.
I'm just a little confused on how the, project cost, the budget kind of aligned with, how you described it, because you just said, and I see in front of me on paper, $218,228.
Yes.
The total project cost listed in, the application is $231,228.
Yeah. I added in the $13,500 that was the preliminary work that the capital campaign has already contributed money and paid invoices on. So
So you're including the total project cost as money that was already paid, spent, and used?
we've spent
outside of-
$1,250. Like, it's not a lot of money. Yeah.
But that's so $13,000, you said it was for the, design, all that, that was already completed.
Also, the crane and the wrap that never happened. Yeah, and it was also to cover all of the architect's hours for the whole project. So he's put in, $1,250 worth of time so far.
So I
That
guess
we've paid.
my kind of bottom line question here is, total project cost, is that stuff that will be newly incurred after town meeting, or is some of this incurred already and being spent already?
Yeah, some is incurred already, and we've gotten a single invoice.
And so
Yeah,
that would
but that's
go
not changing my
under
request to
the,
this group.
other funding,
Yeah,
but it's part of the project.
Right.
I kind of look at least for me, I kind of look at it as this is stuff that was required to even bring it to, to us and have it ready for, us to act on, which to me is kind of it's the total project cost does not, it's not included in that, when we think about how much, like, they're contributing toward the actual project they're requesting town funds for. And, that's kind of what I was trying to get at and figure out, like, what is the actual total project cost of the stuff that, we're basically voting on in October? And, what is the funds that we're providing toward that, and what is our, the
Well,
CPC
the
funds?
ask from
Yeah.
us is 70,000.
Well, it's I think it's 74,114.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think what she's trying to do is explain
trans-
how she arrived at the dividing it into thirds. and obviously for her, she's looking at the overall cost of
Right.
the project. But the ask at town meeting
And
will be
that-
focused on the 74.
And that's something we've always encouraged and we want to see. We want to see that column filled up because that means that's not our money.
Right.
And that means they have more buy-in from whether it's Mass Historical or the Board of Library Trustees or a generous donor. You know, we want to see that column filled up. And if you take that out, that to me reduces the overall actual cost of the project because that's part of the project.
Yeah, I think I'm a similar, but I look at it from a different angle. Is that to me, including stuff that happened before the actual project that we're going to be, funding at town meeting, and we're voting to support, including money that's spent before that to try to just prepare to say that we can, we want to do it for this money, or anything that was spent before that is not the total project cost because that's artificially inflating that. If you
Well,
get my
it's
sense.
not, because
I don't
it's
look at it.
real
No.
cost. I understand what you're saying, but it's an arc, and we have to include everything in that arc of preparation, because for every building that they built in town, I'm sure that they had, you approved funding for the preliminary cost, you get architect fees, then you get approvals, you do feasibility studies, then you get approvals. That's overall, you want to know how much the whole thing is. And this is what she's telling us, is this is how much this entire project is going to cost. And this is how much we're going to be asked. Colleen?
I have a couple questions. On the application, there's some overlap, like in the first budget summary under CPA funds. What is that trying to say, just the amount there? And then further down, it's Board of Library, and then it looks like capital campaign, and the items listed, but it's not clear. So I just wanted to know what it's supposed to be saying on those.
Well, it lists what's being covered. So again, Mass Historic, I thought that they would help cover.
No,
just on ours,
it's
it's
something
like
that
that.
overwrote, there's overriding.
Yeah, you
On
can't
what
really
page?
read it because it's
Sorry.
printed over.
Third page.
It's the CPCIA
It's hard to see.
application.
Oh,
It's a printing issue.
So I'm thinking it's supposed to be a dollar amount there on that
yeah,
first one.
okay. So on my clean copy at the top of the page, total project cost $231,228. The next funds that I'm requesting is $74,114.
Great, and then down lower.
And
there
down
was,
lower, yep, so under Board of Library Trustees, the next organization is Capital Campaign.
Okay, it is.
And their items that they are paying for was all the preliminary work and the architect fees up to $13,000.
Okay, and are they gonna be contributing any more to this project beyond the 13,000?
I believe so, because I have a letter of support that I attached that said they would fund up to 20,000, which is why I feel
So an
comfortable saying.
additional 7,000?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So when you said
Contingency.
the thirds, it was the Mass Historic Grant, CPC, and what was the other third?
The Board of Library Trustees from
Okay.
state aid,
All right.
yeah.
Okay, any other,
Yep.
Yes,
Sandy.
yeah, so I just got a couple of questions. 20 years on drainage in and around a building is really short. So I understand you weren't doing any maintenance on it, but you made a comment that it was you need soldering.
Yeah.
So was it historically correct and you did certain type of materials that aren't typically used now?
I wasn't here when that was done, so
Okay.
I can't answer that. All I can do is say, here are the pictures that the architect took when they were
So
up there.
kind of a question for John, just because you got the historical part. To me, it would be fool's money to replace it with 100-year-old drainage materials and not replace it with modern drainage materials, so you're not coming back in 20 years.
part of the problem is Mass Historical makes the rules.
Oh, I understand that. That's why I'm asking
And
you
if
the
if we,
question.
if we say no, thank you, then we have to come up with their 70,000 locally. Because we've had the problem with the townhouse, and Paul can tell you that we wanted up at the top where you could not see it. He wanted to use Apex or whatever it's called.
Right,
AZAC, yeah.
AZAC,
AZAC,
yeah.
would not matter.
something will be there for
Nobody would
300
ever
years.
see it,
Yeah.
but they
Even
said
up
no.
close, it would have looked just like wood.
Right,
But if, it could be that the workmanship wasn't done correctly, or maybe this wasn't addressed at that time. Or, who knows what's happened in the interim, but
Right.
again, that when I first saw that this was happening, it's like, we just did this 20 years ago.
and I guess that's where my question is. Obviously, the look of it, I would
Yeah.
expect, but internally,
Right.
You'd have to go through Mass Historic, even if you weren't using their funds, because there's a
'cause
preservation restriction on the building.
Right.
They might
Right.
still-
And they require that you use the Secretary of Interior standards when you're doing.
It just for the long-term maintenance of it.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's using materials that are 150 years old, you gotta be up there every year, and it's not gonna be cheap. Okay,
I mean,
I'm
it could
getting,
be that, like, I think there's copper flashing or lead
Yeah.
flashing
Oh.
underneath that
Yes.
did not get replaced
Exactly.
20 years ago because it looked good. Maybe it wasn't good, and in the last 20 years, that has started to degrade. And so when they do this, all that, it will get replaced with copper or lead. It won't get, in terms of it won't be 100-year-old copper. It will be.
no, I mean, copper to me isn't like
Right,
something
Right.
that would scare me. It's the lead, it's the other
Right,
things
right.
that deteriorate quickly,
Mhm.
and that can lead to extra costs and so.
Right.
I'm more concerned about having a minimally, maintained building.
I'm with
Yeah.
you.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. And
So-
again, I realize it's historical, so I.
Right. And they already, like Paul made the best point of all, we already have our hands tied on this because
Yeah.
they got money already, and so your hands are
Gotcha.
obligated to do what Mass Historical says. You could, I'm sure, file an appeal and say, this is cost prohibitive, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how successful you'd be. I don't know that process at all because I don't know that anybody's ever,
And again, and I'm just asking the question
yeah,
because I
no,
don't
it's a
know.
very.
We tried it twice with the townhouse and failed both
No,
times.
it's-
Two different issues.
Yeah, too bad. Okay.
I do believe part of the plan is to put in, because it will be inside and not be able to be seen, is like a plastic type membrane
Right.
on the inside, which
Yeah.
will like seal the whole thing.
No,
Yeah, if
just-
it's not visible, you'll have
Right.
better luck
Yeah.
getting it through.
Yeah, so it's flashing, it's replacing a pipe, it's adding more sealant around the sprinkler pipe that was installed with the project.
Well, that's.
Yeah, that's all
back to the
detailed on.
Yeah, that's back to the contractor who did that work as opposed to,
And that's like when new people come, they may mess up what somebody else did originally.
Yeah.
So, and they may not have done it according to the Secretary's standards.
right.
So, yes.
So the quote you have now, how much did that cost?
To have that quote done,
Yes.
I'm assuming that whatever was billed, which was the $1,250 by the architect.
But we still need to have an estimate done. How much is that going to cost?
There was an estimate, it's not a quote, it's an estimate that the
Okay.
architect got from an engineer.
All right,
So
at
that
one
was
point
wrapped
you
up
said
in
you were
his fee.
still waiting. Got a quote, but you needed to do an estimate. So you haven't.
We have an estimate,
okay.
yes, but I don't have a quote from a vendor, like a construction person who would be doing the actual work.
So you have construction-ready specifications.
Yes.
To do it.
Yes,
A
Jeff.
couple questions. I'll try and speed through this because most of my questions are due to my own ignorance about the budget. But, so when you were doing the construction upgrades, did you know that you were going to need this?
We didn't know until the end of 2019. Remember, we did groundbreaking in November 2019. So I believe a roofer brought it to the attention of the clerk of the works, Andy DeShane. He alerted me. And at that point, I alerted the board. And I've actually had several capital requests, and I think also a CPC request, to give the cupola some attention before it actually started leaking. And what I heard back from various bodies was it's not leaking.
From us, our problem was, and this kind of goes directly to what Justin was saying, is we need to see some real numbers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we just had a verbal estimate
so.
too of
right,
$80,000.
And that was like.
Yeah.
We need more than that because like it's gonna be a lot more expensive. And so
Yeah.
we want to make sure whatever the project
just wanted to
is,
stay on this
is the
point.
project.
Right.
Not part one, part two, part three, because we haven't really fully
Gotcha.
fleshed it out. We'd rather know the whole, pull the Band-Aid, get the whole cost and deal with that.
So my next question is directly on that. If we were to give you the 74, is that going to be to get this cupola, if I'm saying that right, ready to be for the long term like that? Or is this going to be maintaining it to get it back up to just okay, and then we'll readjust it again down the road?
It should be like new, and then we would have an ongoing maintenance plan as part of the library's ongoing budget.
Okay.
Or an agreement with either the capital campaign, who's agreed to take on capital repair, or Board of Trustees to put, some percentage of state aid back into the building annually.
Okay, and then
Yeah. To alleviate me having to come back.
okay, and then just a couple more questions. And I know Justin did ask this, but you're saying that 13,000, the architect has already been paid that money?
No. No, they gave us an estimate of their work for the entire project that included three phases, right? So preliminary work to do the drawings and initial estimate.
All right.
And then a construction document phase and then an actual as it's happening phase.
My understanding.
Yeah, so that's that 13,000 quote from them also included the cost to rent a crane and wrap the cupola, because when we started exploring this project, we thought that was a step we were gonna need to take. And we have decided not to do that.
So it's not coming down at all? They're gonna do the work in place?
Yep, so they say.
Sandy?
Yeah, and just a quick question. Obviously, you just have invested a lot of money. You do have an O&M plan. The architect and the engineer gave you an O&M plan, correct?
A what?
An operation and maintenance plan.
Yes, I have
Okay.
7 binders in my office.
Okay.
Yes, but it doesn't address the cupola, it's more,
No,
The buil-
I'm
the building in
just saying,
general,
just
yes.
as kind of a
Yes.
sea changes to understand how to keep it so that
Right.
you're not coming back in 5 years.
exactly. And on my own, I've started plotting out actually a 25-year plan for the building, like when will we need to replace the hot water heater and the stove and the windows, when are those warranties running out? So that we have it.
So you mentioned before that you had requested from CIPC and CPC previously. What did you request from the capital campaign for this previously?
We hadn't gone to the capital campaign. with
But
the
they're an
cupola.
exclusive funding source for the library for projects like this, and
They
you
are.
never
Yes.
asked for them?
They were looped in, but I didn't go directly to them, no, because they were raising the $1 million specifically at that time for the renovation and taking,
And
yeah.
since then, you've never, is it beyond this
Well,
13?
now I have, yes,
Okay.
and they've committed $20,000.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have one more.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Justin does too. So.
I know when you came to CPC last time, there was comparisons to the old meeting house in South Grafton when they were denied funding, and there was a lot of comparisons between this project and that project. So what's changed since then for that?
I don't understand your question.
So
I don't
when you
remember
came
what
to
I-
CPC last time to request funding, it was pretty much viewed as maintenance at that time,
Yeah.
that this is an ongoing maintenance issue, and had maintenance, stepped up, and it was basically a similar project to what was at the South Grafton Meeting House, and the South
Yeah.
Grafton Meeting House was denied CPC funding. And I just didn't know, and maybe this is more of a question towards the committee, but what has enough changed to substantially consider this?
I think that what has changed is the threat to the room below the cupola, because in the interim, the cupola, the ceiling has actually started leaking because of the water coming into the cupola. So now we have a more serious threat that I feel meets the funding criteria, that we could lose that historic room that we've also just spent a lot
And the
of
roof
money
has
on.
started coming down. It's not
The
just
ceiling, yeah,
right.
yeah.
My recollection is the South Grafton Community House was a predominantly painting project, and painting is specifically precluded. It's considered to be a general maintenance. We had asked if there was a level of rot, because we can, if things have deteriorated, we can use CPA funds that way, but we never got that detail. The project was pulled. This one is, yeah, you could say it's a maintenance issue, except it's been 20 years and now it's gone to the point where there is significant rot. It's deteriorated to the point where it's leaking into a brand newly restored room. So I think it falls beyond general
Well,
maintenance.
just to
at this
say,
point.
and I know it's a little redundant, but the question about that South Grafton property, I was at that meeting. We didn't ask if there was any rot. We knew there was. We had asked for, or you guys had asked for like a percentage
Yep.
of rot, which we're not asking for here.
But it's because this has got a significant, this is could potentially have structural issues
Yeah.
related
And-
to
It's at the bottom.
further deterioration. And well, we need the envelope to be buttoned up, and you have to do preservation, carpentry, and restoration to this building because of the mass historical
Yep.
restriction.
In all due respect, John, what I remember, especially from that, discussion, over a few meetings with the, community house, was that, Joanne had even reached out to the, coalition about that exact topic, and they said that because the rotting was due to a failure in maintenance, it still would not qualify. That was what I remember, Joanne just, reiterating back to us. And, even though the rotting and the, painting was part of restoring it and making sure that no damage or further damage happened to the building itself, it was still not qualified. I'm concerned that even though this is a longer period of time of lack of maintenance, it's still an issue that surface because of lack of maintenance over 20 years.
But I would have to review that because I don't remember any of that, but this painting in and of itself is maintenance. That is not asking us to paint the cupola.
That's what, that's
Well,
not
it's
what
on
it-
here
That's
for-
not even. what-
Painting is incidental to the
That,
repair.
the project here is restoration. The project, as it was what I remember presented last summer, or whenever it was painting with some carpentry that needed to be done. And we didn't get details of how much carpentry needed to be done. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter the cause of the rot, because rot is rot and it needs to be repaired. But if the primary focus of the project was to paint the building, we can't do that. If there's a significant amount of structural work, carpentry work that needs to be done, then you then have to repaint the building, then that goes part and parcel with the project. But the cart can't lead the horse on it. It can't be, we're gonna make this into a preservation project, even though it really is painting. It has to be a preservation project first that requires painting to finish the job.
I thought the envelope was compromised at the
That
meeting
was-
house
Yeah,
too,
that-
which
that
was,
was
which was
the-
part of
The
it.
proposal was there is rot, and then the
But well, I
question
think the
switched to,
problem is we
well,
did
are we
not get
gonna have
enough
to paint
information and the
it?
project was pulled immediately without any
But
further.
it doesn't seem like you guys, like
And we're
John
getting
or
off
Paul
topic.
are
We're
concerned
getting
about.
way
No,
off.
I'm on this point right now.
Yeah.
It seems like that at least, other than, I guess the three of us over here, no one seems to be concerned with how much of this is actually, rot or, from a failure of maintenance to cause this problem. It
They
seems like
used the word
there's,
maintenance.
I don't think the failure.
Ken has the
Oh,
floor.
sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I understand your argument, Justin, but taken to it at extreme, then no restoration project would apply, would meet those requirements, because in that extreme, any restoration all restorations are only required because, there was some failure of maintenance along the way. And so, that argument, I don't think that argument applies to this restoration project.
And I'll just circle back, the reason I asked that question was because this committee raised that comparison last time, and I just wanted to see what, if any, threshold had changed to remove that comparison.
Yeah, this is not caused by a lack of painting.
I listened to this, and this is a water issue, and it's a drainage issue, which is why my concern is, you don't want to put in old-fashioned drainage if that's going to happen again.
Right.
That's, yeah.
And I think, again, I don't know what work has been done or has not been done at the townhouse. If we'd gotten additional information, and that's what we did to Beth. So Beth could be up here real upset too, saying, you didn't give me money the first time. Because we said, no, we need more information. And so what did Beth do? She went home and did her homework. Right there, okay? I have emailed Evan because he wanted to do work at the townhouse 2 weeks ago. I haven't heard back. We're happy to do what the town wants us to do, but if people don't communicate to us, it's real hard for us to help them.
Yeah, I think my overall sticking point is I'm having a hard time seeing the actual difference between what we turned down with the community house and what was required there versus what's actually required for the cupola. Yes, this, the cupola is leaking into another room that we, restored and, spent money on, but that to me is, the other room is not the issue with us spending money on restoring the cupola. I'm having a hard time seeing the difference there, and I don't.
Again,
So-
it's a lack of detail in the application.
John, could I just?
Paul didn't get his
If I
chance.
can just add, so with the South Grafton Community House, painting was the primary part of the project,
90
and there was some incidental rot that needed to
It
be
was like
dealt with.
95%,
Yeah, it was-
5%.
And we were trying to work with Evan and suggested that, perhaps if he went back, because he hadn't done a real thorough review of it, he had kind of walked around the building and made his judgment. That, if he could look back and find that there was more rot, that we would be able to assist with that piece of it. And, if the rot was actually the majority of the project, then the paint becomes incidental and can be supported. And the project that you have before you right now is not a painting project. It's a repair to a issue with the cupola that is causing damage to the room below it. That is the primary purpose of the project. If it requires painting, it's only incidental. So it's the opposite from the other project.
I,
Ken.
No, I was going to say the same thing. We were trying to get Evan to estimate, even give us a large estimate of what the percentage of rot was versus painting. And, he was saying something like 5% rot, 95% painting. And we said, well, maybe it's more than that, but he didn't go with that. And then he withdrew.
Was it Jack?
She can read the statement
Yeah.
she's gonna say first.
Oh, no, I'm just gonna say the minutes go 80-20. It wasn't like a
Okay, I'm sorry.
95%.
Even 80-20.
And also, I
Not
want
quite
to tie this up. When that conversation did happen, I was there and I had covered all of those meetings, filming all of them. The proposition coming forward was there's an entire wall of this building that needs to be replaced because it's rotted. So we'd even say 25%. And then we said, are you going to paint? We said, well, we're not going to paint one wall. So yes, we'll paint the whole thing. That's when it shifted to, well, if you're going to paint more than you're going to replace, we can't do that. And then once we kept pushing more demands, well, now you need to give us a better percentage. Now you need to give this. I can understand why he would be frustrated and not want to come forward. My only concern with this, and I feel like this is something we do need to pass, because we've already spent so much money on this library, and it keeps needing more. And has the staff problem been addressed? Because I remember the first proposal to town meeting was one of the benefits to
Yeah.
funding this is we won't need more staff. And I was at,
That
this
has
is,
nothing to do.
this is
that has
100%
nothing
to do with this, because at the
does
next
not.
meeting, the very next meeting, the point was raised that we need more staff now. So,
This is not a staff question. This is.
but it's a monetary question, and if that's still gonna cost them money going forward,
It's not on the grant request.
it still has to do with money going forward. I do feel like we need to continue to fund this, because I don't believe in sunk cost, but we've spent a lot of money, and for it to continue to break down and continue to need more, and I don't see unfortunately, I don't see you guys getting more money in your budget going forward. So you say we can form a plan for maintenance going forward, but you just said hot water heater, other issues coming forward. I just don't want to see, Brooke,
So we're in like
She didn't-
25
actually, she didn't
years.
say that. She said she wanted to set up a schedule.
Yeah.
So you have life cycle costs. So when you look at a building that's just been done, the first thing you're going to be doing is you do a life cycle cost. Hopefully one was done. And what that does is identifies all the mechanical, all of the other maintenance work, and there's a
Certainly.
routine to that.
I'm just worried about those funds being regularly coming from us.
They can't come from us.
They wouldn't.
We can't do maintenance. We can't pay for a hot water heater.
Yeah.
We can't do any of that.
We're
stuff.
paying for a cupola right now.
That's not a hot water heater.
And that's also part of a
Preservation.
historical, that's
And
also
they
a
use the word
historical building.
maintenance.
It's an
But
architectural.
anyway, I'm just worried,
detail.
Brooke always said
Historic
that, he was a longtime member of this board, didn't want to supplement budgets, didn't like maintenance.
This is
I just-
literally the cherry on the top. This is the cherry on top of that building. And that, I've been on CPC since day one. And that is what CPC has always been to me, and this is the way, when I did my training, it's the cherry on the top. It's what the town can't afford to do, what it would like to do, but it's not in the budget. And we have the added layer of it has to meet CPA law. We can't just do something because we think it's the right thing to do. That's why we couldn't do the South Grafton Community House without more information to say, okay, it passes the threshold of going from maintenance to preservation. Because we'd already spent several $100,000 on that building. It's not that we didn't invest money in that building. We appreciate what they've done to that building. But unless it meets the standards, and that's what our job is to make sure that whatever it's proposed meets CPA. And if it doesn't, as good as a project is, we can't fund it legally.
Yeah, I think we have a duty to approve most of this, because like I said, we've already spent so much, and like you said, the cherry on top, we need to put that cherry on top. We need to wrap this up.
Can you just remind me again, what is the South Grafton Community House used for? Who uses that?
Is it the veterans? I'm not sure if it's which veterans group.
Nipmucks used to
And the
use it.
Nipmucks have part of it, and it's also a community room that's available for rent. And the Nipmucks in the back and on the right-hand side are one of the veterans groups.
Okay.
And they have meetings there too. I've attended a couple meetings at that
Like-
space.
So what action do we need to take tonight
So-
on this?
Do I have a motion on, well, we're not voting on the project tonight. We're just getting it, gathering information. We will vote at the next meeting on the projects. So, do you have other questions, concerns, comments?
I will say this is well put together, of what you need and how much money you've already gotten. This is well put together.
And have you seen the whole?
No, I believe, I've seen, I've seen the
You
library.
haven't even seen the whole thing.
Yeah, I've seen the library. I know that this, like I said, it needs to be done.
Roger Trahan hasn't been.
Roger
recognized.
Trahan,
He's
Chair,
the
Board
chairman of the
Board of Library Trustees Chair, and I just wanted, maybe I'm speaking to the choir here, but just to reiterate, the application instructions for community preservation funding, the three of the top tenets are regarding priority. Priority is given to projects that preserve resources that would otherwise be threatened and or serve a currently underserved population. Number two, priority is given to projects that leverage funding from other sources and or fill a gap where other sources are not available. I think you've seen our ability to not just say, please fund us, that we're approximately at 1/3 request and 2/3 funding internally. And then the third being, projects should demonstrate cost sensitivity to both short-term use of CPA funds and long-term maintenance or lifespan of the resources for which funds are used. And so we spoke of, Beth spoke of the idea of, and a best practice of a maintenance plan. And so, I think that I don't think this is on the fence. I think we've satisfied, maybe some tweaking of numbers needs to be done, but I think that all of the materials put forth satisfy the three priorities, top priorities of what these CPA funds
I
are
think
for.
Justin had a question.
So I just don't want this getting lost in some comparison to another project. Maybe things shouldn't have, maybe or maybe not, things should or could have been done differently down there. But I don't want that comparison to result in a library preservation of this historic area being a casualty of that, so.
My only question that, I'm kind of currently thinking about is where we did get a, response from the, Stuart, I think coalition regarding the community house, and, where there's at least, between me and some, members of this committee, a slight disagreement about, the differences between this and that. Is it worth having either our admin or our clerk or, reach out in writing to the coalition to see if we can get some sort of response for our next meeting that we can just utilize in our decision making?
What's the question you want asked?
Just,
The same one we asked for South Grafton.
yeah, basically the same one.
There's not a question. This project qualifies for CPA.
I would-
believe that's your
Not a
opinion.
question for four of us.
Yeah, it's not a question for you. It's not a question for some
I
of us.
gave you an answer.
It is a question for, my understanding of it based on the response they gave for the community house. And if
So
we reach
so
out
I
to them,
should say, is a preservation project that involves restoration of the roof and building materials in the cupola qualify for CPA?
from a
funding.
cupola that is in a deteriorated state from lack of maintenance over 20 years.
We
That's the,
don't know that it's from a lack of maintenance. We don't know
That's
that
what's
that's
in-
the cause.
that's what, Ms. Ryder has just said in her presentation today, that it was.
Those were her words.
It was her words, that it was from lack of maintenance.
Okay, so
That
it's
is-
a lack of maintenance.
And
That's your
you know,
question, is
my-
lack of maintenance.
Townhouse had the same problem.
My,
So the townhouse
but
had the
again,
same, townhouse
that-
had, the
I
townhouse
think-
had the same problem.
Ken brought that up. It's, then every
150-year-old
project for
roof.
any historic project, it's gonna have that issue.
That's-
Failure,
that's my-
any town-owned property,
that's
city-owned
my
property
concern on
will
why
have
this-
lack of
John,
maintenance. That's what
are you
happens.
gonna let me talk? You're gonna talk over me.
No,
I'm
I will
sorry.
talk over you because I have the floor.
That's also our point about the other thing is that it comes from like this, but
Okay, and you're interrupting me too. Have the floor. Lack of maintenance is what happens when you don't maintain old buildings. Every town has this problem. That is not a requirement that you have to go out and have somebody certify that this was maintained properly. Because if it's maintained properly, you don't need to do the historic preservation work that this is requiring at the time.
But that's my exact concern, John, is that, yes, we've had things funded in the past, that probably were because of lack of maintenance or, different things like that. My, concern in this case is the exact drawing the line from where, it was said, lack of maintenance. Even after we paid to, refurbish the entire library, we've had this, as a plan, it was all done, lack of maintenance. And then that's the reason this is an issue for this project. And I don't see the difference between the scope of what this project's concerns are right now versus what the community house was. And if we can get a answer from the coalition, that will help me understand that difference and what, they
So
said.
if the answer comes back in a way that you disagree with, that means you would vote no against this project? Is that what,
If the coalition says that this is fine, and, when we ask the question, with the mention that it was described to us as because of lack of maintenance over 20 years, then yes, and they say it's fine, I will be voting in favor of this to move it to town meeting.
So,
go ahead.
just to kind of, I think it's worth the effort. I mean, I've been on, I don't know, this committee 3-4 years now. And when I first came on, I had no clue. And, having gone through it and having to read certain things, having gone through the the public hearing notice, all that kind of doing research on that, it's a process of learning. I would say that it would be a good learning experience for everyone in the commission to get that question out there and just make sure that there's in there that, that it was restored 20 years ago. I don't know if there was CPC money at that time, but it was done 20 years ago. And we're talking over a 20-year period. And then, it was only discovered because of other restoration work at the library, and it was brought forward. And again, the people who are there now weren't there when it got restored. I mean, it is a problem that's systematic for a lot of buildings. I mean, the best example I can give is MSBA requirements now for new schools. Because when they did all the schools in the 80s and 90s, nothing was taken care of. And when they came back with this new round in the 2000s, they basically said, you cannot do this project without having maintenance O&M plans, or sorry for the jargon, but operation maintenance plan, because you can't come back later. That's not how this regulation is set up. I think it would be really good if we did something on O&M, but it would be good for I think, just the committee and the whole, just to get that feedback.
And just to, expand on my main, kind of, thought process in different words that I just thought of is, I don't want a situation where I feel like, at least, goalposts are moving based on the project. I want to understand where the goalposts are.
I'm offended, and I don't know if that's the right word, that there are people at this table that have been here a long time, that we have a pretty good handle on what CPA is. We've approved a lot of projects. And because there's one project that had a hiccup, that this is the reason we have an initial meeting and then a voting meeting, and that for whatever reason, that project, they decided to pull it because we asked questions, because there was a disagreement. That didn't mean the project wasn't worthy. It didn't mean it didn't qualify. It meant we needed more information. And to compare these two projects, that's not how we do this. It's, the application is before us.
And John, my concern is not that they pulled it, it's not that we asked questions, it's that we got an answer from the coalition.
I will
That to
double
me
check on
applies to
that.
this.
I will
And-
go back and I'll ask Joanne if she has, I'm sure she has all those emails or somewhere on your computer. Because honestly, my memory is like this.
Yep.
I can't remember detail like that.
But then,
But-
are we okay with sending this question to the coalition?
I
for
have a
next meeting?
big note to email Stuart first thing tomorrow morning.
Then I'm,
And they're
then,
closed on Friday, so he
Yep.
will have to get back to me next week.
then I'm happy with moving forward with getting that question sent and hopefully getting an answer by next meeting.
Well, usually within a week, they get back to you, if not within a couple of days.
Perfect. So then when we get the answer. send it-
Sorry.
That's okay. I did just want to say that I did have a roofer up on the roof until we moved to St. Andrews in our temporary quarters. So there was somebody in my tenure looking at it annually, the exterior, not the interior, as well as the shingles and the gutters. And it wasn't until we moved out and then 6 months later broke ground and somebody saw the interior had the deterioration. So when I say lack of maintenance, it's nobody was going up inside and taking a look, and it wasn't actively leaking until we were not on site. So it wasn't complete, lack of maintenance on my part.
Clean.
Just
So
would like to correct that.
you mentioned that anywhere between 40 and 75,000 roughly is what you're hoping for. So that signals to me that the potential of turn back money here. And I just wanted to know, how will you prioritize turning back money to CPA versus the capital campaign? Will you make sure that all of the capital campaign gets spent and then we get them?
That's not how it works.
That's in the act.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's
Our
required.
money,
So that 20,000 will
required.
have
money
to get
gets
spent.
spent last. The only
Okay.
technicality is that Mass Historical Grant requires that you fund your project up front, and there must be some mechanism within the town to cover that. And if not, then our money technically would cover that. But then whenever the money was received from Mass Historical, that would backfill our money. But our money technically is supposed to be, and it's in our grant agreements, is supposed to be spent last.
So I say that because on the application it says 13,000, but she's saying 20,000. So can we update this so that the capital campaign is doing 20,000?
Is that,
if you would like me to revise that.
Yeah, I
can.
would, because
Okay.
that's the number you've been saying tonight, so I
That's
want
all
it
you
to be
have to do.
reflected
Sure.
here.
is that the cover page
Yeah.
with the dollar amounts? You don't need to do the whole thing.
Got
Yeah,
it.
Colleen, it's very common for projects to return money.
Oh, for sure,
It's
for
very
sure,
common.
very
All-
common. But I just want to know when she has the opportunity to return money to multiple sources that we're prioritizing.
And we, no, by
Right.
law, we're required, and we also.
Right,
watch
but
it.
when the number's not
I'm
matching what's
The
being
biggest
said.
penny pincher in this room.
Yeah.
This is a little bit off topic, but I mean, I know that I feel it sometimes that I'm a little bit, I know Concom, right? You asked me about, where you have quorums. I can tell you all the different processes because I've been doing it for so long. It would be nice, and I'm sure there's availability of, online sessions or something that the members, I would listen to it and so forth, because I've been paying attention to the proposed changes to the CPC. I don't know if you've heard about them, and you probably have, around affordable housing. So that perked my interest, and I've been sort of following it, not just because I listen to NPR all the time, but, I mean, it would be helpful if we,
Stewart
yeah.
actually came here, I don't know how many years ago.
Roughly
He
five.
actually did a presentation for us.
Oh.
2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, really?
And
More than 3.
It was
So-
pre-pandemic.
It was my
Easy
first
for me
year
to
here
say.
on this
So-
committee.
I could ask him
And
if
I'm-
you guys would want to have a working session, a training session at some point.
And
They
even,
do workshops periodically,
Yeah,
too.
I
I know
mean,
you
that's
and I
fine.
went to one
I've
in
been to-
Shrewsbury. Or
So
was it
I think before
Northborough,
COVID,
one
I have not been to anything
makes
since.
sense, even online stuff. I mean, I'm just, something a little bit more, overview of everything and to get into, because I think everyone, I hope anyways, everyone that serves on this, committee just wants to follow the law. That's it. I mean, I think the bottom line, the more educated I can be, the better I can do it. And yeah, I mean, I asked you about the historical stuff because that's not what I do.
Right.
That's not, and I don't have a good background on that, and I'm not going to learn all of that, so.
I have a question on the, so you're saying it's already leaking
Yeah.
into this room?
It leaked once,
Okay,
but we don't know when or if it's going to leak again.
okay.
So-
Then I'm not gonna ask you to speculate, but, yeah, because that would not be fair. But I just would say going forward, since this isn't the final, like, ask we're gonna come back again and vote, if you would try and figure out, God forbid, this quickly before town meeting, before money can be given and spent, turns into a bigger problem with leaking coming in. We could estimate, we give you this much, and then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, this is a much different beast now.
Right.
So if we could have some sort of an idea of what this, because again, I'm for this, even at where it is right now, but what this could become
Okay.
if we don't take action, I would like to see that.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure I can get a value for the historic reading room and,
Exactly,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah,
think I think that would
Replace
definitely,
carpets, replace ceiling.
yeah,
and
I think
Yeah.
plaster.
that would
Yep.
help a lot.
Yeah. okay. In 2 weeks? Is it 2 weeks?
Right, well,
When's your next meeting?
3.
3 weeks, okay.
Just because,
Yeah.
like I said, I want this to go through. So if there are any
Sure.
holdups saying like, all right, you could give us this now, or if you don't, it's more for town meeting than us. But if you go to
Okay.
town meeting and say, this
What
could
we
turn into like something
potentially stand to
huge.
lose.
So I think that would help you in town meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Okay.
All right, thank you for your time and for
Thank-
your great questions. I really
you so
appreciate
much.
it.
Roger, did you get to speak enough?
I can never.
This is rare. This is rare.
I'm biting my
I've never
tongue
seen
now.
him so quiet.
Thank you so much. I hope this goes through and we'll be back.
thank you for coming and thank you for your very, 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 very thorough application. I think you win the prize
I
for
think
the
that's the
longest
longest
application ever.
I just took all the grant materials and went,
Yeah, no,
go.
but it shows that you did your homework.
Also, I was shamed for coming forward with a word of mouth $80,000 estimate.
No, that
So,
wasn't.
there you
no,
go.
that
I know it
was
wasn't
just-
your intent, but that's, you
No,
know.
but it's like, that's our
fine.
job is because, and it's not to
I
do that to you.
Yeah.
It's because we don't want that to happen to you, even though, again,
Yeah.
great project.
Yep,
Town meeting is
brutal,
sometimes can be tough.
That's why.
brutal.
And we want to make sure that you have, and like he's giving you questions to be prepared. We don't know where all these questions are going to come from. So if you have all this, then you can answer almost any question that somebody can have. And so that's at least one less issue you have to worry about at town.
Because we'd have situations where it's like, we're gonna give money we definitely have to a park, and someone, that time is like, well, there's no presentation. And it's like, money we have to a park, like, please. So, yeah, I feel like if we have some sort of like, we need this.
And a lot of times you prepare and you don't have to say 2 words.
Yeah.
But that
That's
was
when
time well
Roger's gonna
spent.
Yeah, I'll take care of the
Prepare.
so I'll relieve her of that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Okay.
So
back-
John, real quick, before we do
Yeah.
the treasure report, and while we're still talking about applications, just the application itself, I was looking at recently, and we're not really following our own application.
The application online is something that Joanne was working on. They got a new website. I don't know what that's done to all that stuff. William said he thought that everything was okay. I need to be able to have time to sit down.
But like,
That
if-
Beth and I can,
Yeah, like where it like gives the outline of like we're supposed to have a public meeting in June, which we didn't. All of things to be in by July 1st, which obviously paving kind of screwed stuff up. But
right.
I don't know if there was something we should put out online so that people that were maybe thinking that, oh, I'll go to that, and then it didn't happen, and I don't
But
know.
again, it's like the transition from Joanne to Beth has been a very long process.
Right.
Okay.
And so we hope to be able to catch up with all of that because I know a lot of that, that's not the only thing that's in there. I don't know how to manipulate the town website. I don't know if you have, because only certain people have access to do things.
Her name's on there now, though. I saw
Yeah,
it
So you're
today.
on there?
I
Yep.
will have, yeah.
Her name's on there, Colleen's name is not. I checked
Oh, I
today.
saw it today.
Oh, I checked earlier today.
It does,
wasn't
you
it?
gotta rotate your phone and then it shows.
Oh,
up.
you
No, I
mean,
looked on the website,
like
on the
on, because Cindy did ask
Oh.
me
I saw my name on there.
for names of, like, she wanted your name because she didn't have whatever, for whatever reason. Whoever
Yeah.
was to get that to her.
Yeah.
And it's EY, correct? And hopefully it's spelled right, but, I know she said she had to leave. She's got.
This is unsolicited, but the town website's horrible now. I cannot find it.
Oh,
I
that's
agree.
not fair.
I
I
agree.
used to use
I
it
agree.
all the
I
time.
agree.
I cannot
agree.
literally find anything on it.
No, that's,
Oh,
I
no.
like it.
I couldn't find it. I was
That is
trying to-
completely
it's like
true.
so hard on your
That's the
phone.
hardest thing, is the agenda.
It's, you're just like,
The
and you
more
just
you
give
use
up.
it, it becomes, it's pretty intuitive.
well, you
I'll
give
show
up
you.
before you,
Well, text me, John. You got my number. I'll tell you anything you want to know.
but anyway, it's like, you know, like everything you have to learn, so. But again, that's on me because this has taken a long time to get Beth interviewed and hired, and then she literally just got her computer, her laptop this Tuesday. So again, this has been slow, so.
We're happy to have you.
And I told Joanne, I said, we miss you. It's like, it's falling between the cracks.
Have you worked with CPA before? Oh, so we should
She,
definitely get
she,
Stuart in.
she
That'd be
works
great.
in the
Across the
health
hall on
department.
Hill.
So she already can do a lot of this background stuff that, you know, online, or the bills and agendas and room and all that stuff. But the CPC stuff, we're gonna bring her up to speed real quick.
Through osmosis.
Okay, so, and Ken, I jumped the gun. I never miss quick. He sent an email and we printed the wrong one. He had one change, right?
Yeah.
So there's only one line that
I
needs to be
printed the
changed.
wrong one? I
No,
thought
it's
I
not your
printed
fault. It's like, he sent it and then he sent another one.
Yeah,
Oh, I
5
thought I
minutes
printed
later,
the
5 minutes
second
later.
one.
Yep, I have the updated one on screen.
Okay, good.
What's the one change? So I can just
I,
change it on my
I
paper.
didn't see the.
Bill-
Oh,
Ken,
I
alright.
didn't catch what.
Ken will tell you. If I can find it.
Can you make this screen a little
Okay.
bigger? I'm like,
As John gets ready to start, I'd like to say, Colleen, that the application process and material on the website is antiquated and in great need of review.
All right. Are you assigning me that? Please say you
Well,
are.
I'm just saying, maybe that's the clerk's job, I don't know.
Oh, excellent.
But it's,
We need a motion for that because I got it done by
it's
Tuesday.
it's in great need of review. I think it was done 20 years ago.
Oh, phenomenal.
And it's,
No, it's been too.
Yeah, no, I would love to
it's
take
very,
that
it's
task.
dated.
Yeah.
Very dated.
Well, we made it so we could fill it out online, but it's obviously not working right because it's typing over things.
Yeah, anyway, that's, okay, so the treasurer's report. Since we have a lot of newness in the committee, at first I'd like to call your attention to the 2023 report, the other one.
Yep.
Okay, so let me quickly review how the money flows in the Community Preservation Act. So at the beginning, prior to the beginning of each year, and actually probably in April before the May town meeting for the next fiscal year, we get together and estimate the revenues that's going to come in on the subsequent fiscal year, and that's done with a method that's prescribed in the Act and by custom, in the way the CPCs do things, to be a particular procedure. It's kind of squirrely because we're making estimates for the next fiscal year based on the current fiscal year, but the current fiscal year is not closed yet. And so we actually are making next year's estimates based on last year. So we're making them 2 years in advance. And that's kind of crazy, but we do that. And then we split out the 3 10% reservations. We split out the admin, and then sometimes we pay some bonds with that. And then we take the remainder of that, which is money that we're guessing that we're going to have next year. And the Act says we can put that into what's called a budgeted reserve. And that's a kind of a mysterious process that allows you to spend money that has not yet arrived, money that we're only estimating that's going to arrive in the next fiscal year, and we get to spend it starting on day one. And we could spend it through grants throughout the whole year, and at the end of the year, when that year gets closed, we find out how much revenue we actually got in, and how much interest we made, and things like that, and then we settle it all up at the end of the year and make adjustments. And so it's a process of estimating the next year from last year, and then, somehow getting to use the money that we haven't got yet while it comes in. It's quite a process. So at the end of the year, we correct all the estimates. And in the treasurer's report, the treasurer's report is structured so it has the revenue, the current year revenue on the top group. It's got, in the second group, it's got carried over funds that are known as the undesignated fund balance. And that is the name that's in the Act. So that's the name we use. And then the last group, the third group, is the reserved funds, which are the three category reserves. And then in this report, I put a summary at the end just to kind of put it all into groupings of how much came in, how much is going out, and what's left. So going back up to the middle section, these reports are color-coded, where green are amounts that we have estimated, and they stay green until they get corrected and finalized. Then the light blue tints are not shown on here, but the light blue is what's going to happen at the next town meeting. And since this is last year, there is no next town meeting. And then the kind of the rose color is for future town meetings, even beyond the next one. But yellow is the updates and corrections that we make, corrections of the estimates when the real numbers come in. And since 2023 has ended, the closing has begun, and I got some preliminary numbers for what the actual revenue is. It's not going to be the final number, but it should be close. And so in the orange numbers, on the upper right-hand orange one where it says 613,439, that is the current estimate for what the actual surcharge was. And so we put the number in there, and then the yellow number next to it, $51,000, that is an increase to the, you know, that's a correction to the surcharge. So we got $51,000 more than we estimated. So that gets dumped into the undesignated fund when the year ends. Then there's state match that we had estimated for 2003. We estimated 35%, but when it came in, it was only 30%. And so that's a $20,000 deduction in our estimate. But the good news was, subsequent to that, the state granted an additional fund for CPA. And so the actual full state match, rather the total state, you know, they gave us more. And so the additional state match was $46,000. So actually, the total of the, you know, it was a net increase of $26,000 over the estimate that we had made. That's good news. And then so the new numbers we have are the revenue and a number for the interest. We had estimated $20,000 interest, but it looks like it's going to be more like $35,000. So that's a plus $15,000 increase over the money that we, you know, had been assuming that we had. So that's $66,000 more money than we thought, based on the close. Now, yet to come are the amount we spent on admin and any project closeouts. They will both probably increase the amount of money by a small amount. So that's the good news. And so what that did is that kicked up the ending undesignated fund balance to 229 from the 200K that it was before, or the
177, 926.
yeah, the 177 it was before. And so that's good news from the 2023 close, with more yet to come. So moving to 2024, the mistake I made in the, roll it down a little bit so that we can see the undesignated fund. The mistake I made is that 50,000 didn't carry over. And so we have $252,000 initial undesignated fund for your printed copy. It's 252,000. And then if you spin down to the green line below that, so the remaining funds for any purposes is 299. And at the very bottom line, the number including the reserves is 557, 751.
So you're just dumping that from your computer, Justin?
Yes.
Onto that computer?
Yeah, this computer has it correct.
And by doing it this way, they're also getting it on the recording.
Okay.
Okay, so that's all the good news. And if you roll up to the top of this screen,
Let me know real quick, because when you have your computer, you'll be able to do that.
Yep.
Because you'll have all this stuff on your computer. And
Okay.
you'll pull up a document and it'll magically appear there. I don't know how. Justin will tell you. I don't know.
Very quick on
plug
just
it
one
in.
point, John, is that I'm more than happy to continue doing this for the meetings if that doesn't have the, you know, technical knowledge to do that as
So
well.
moved.
But I'm also happy to show Beth how to do it.
Right, but it's also just so,
In case that one night you may
Yeah,
not.
You're not
Yeah.
here.
No, absolutely.
That was good.
Okay.
Redundancies.
sorry.
so when I was updating this for the closing numbers, et cetera, I was, since this is the first report out since the town meeting, I was putting in the article numbers over on the left, that for each of the things we do. I was putting, and I was going through Article 20, putting Article 20 in there, when I noticed that there's 5 numbers in Article 20, and 4 of them were right, and 1 of them was wrong. It was transcribed wrong by Mary Lorett, by the accountant. She got it wrong. She got the $73,700 reserves off the right spreadsheet. She took the $24,000 for the admin reserve off the correct spreadsheet. She took the Pell Farm bond payment correctly off that spreadsheet, but she took the initial budgeted reserve amount off the wrong spreadsheet, off one that she had that she had from before. And so the 358,884 number was off her old obsolete spreadsheet. It should have been 479,000 something. but, and it sailed through the FinCom, and it sailed through town meeting with no one noticing it. And so there's a $70,000 amount of our estimated revenue that did not make it into the budgeted reserve. And the ramifications of that is that the committee cannot use that for grants until July 1st of next year, when it rolls into the undesignated fund.
So we under budgeted
Can you?
what our budgeted
Article
reserve
20, it's on
was.
the-
By $70,000.
So even though
Do you know how to find that?
legally, technically,
Yes,
it's there, but
I don't know.
legally,
I can't
technically,
do it
we
without
can't touch it
Right.
for a year.
Fair.
Now, I want to relate this to the fact that we always estimate low, and like for this year, we estimated $50,000 low for the revenue last year, and, you know, 15,000 low for the interest. We always estimate low, and, you know, and it doesn't hurt anything, it's just that we can't use the amount we did, you know, the lowness of it. In this case, this is coming in 70, this joins that money. So the good news of the fact that we got $65,000 addition for our use today, by the closeout from last year, we lose 70,000 because of this
It's
error.
almost a wash.
And so it's almost a wash.
But we'll be ahead
It's being
70.
conservative.
And,
gotta wait a
and furthermore,
Always consider.
it's not going to impede the committee's operation at all, because there, you know, the rest of the money is more than enough to cover the projects that are anticipated for October.
Yep.
So it's not an operational issue, but it was a mistake that was made and sailed through.
So just a quick question, looking at Article 20, you're saying it was during the budgeted reserve, that's the 358, that's the one that's off 75?
Correct. That should have been,
From last year.
428.
it should have been 429, 399.
Okay.
But she must have had the current spreadsheet and the old one up on her screen, and she took that number off the old spreadsheet.
Okay.
The one that before the meeting where we determined what it should be.
And how would the Finance Committee have caught that?
There's no way they would have caught that.
Okay.
And just to, my understanding, and I want to say it out loud more for people, other people, and to be corrected if I'm wrong, any CPA project that gets funded in May town meeting that's coming in 2024, this 70,000 will be available because the funds are not available for the CPA projects from May until July 1st. Is that correct?
This money will be
Depends where the money's
available
from.
for granting in May, yes.
Okay.
So it depends on where the money, because there's sometimes we fund projects depending on how we choose to fund it. It isn't available till July 1st.
Yeah.
But if there's money available immediately, the project needs to take place.
Yeah.
Like a
There-
construction project, we'll say the money's available tomorrow,
The Typical projects, July 1st.
usually
is
July
fine.
1st.
Yep, okay.
So, moving on through fiscal 2024, the library cupola restoration has a placeholder in blue and italics for the 74,000 number that was mentioned. If it goes, that's a good place to put it. There'll still be money left in that reserve, and so we didn't need it. The undesignated fund has 252,000 rolled over from the prior year, has not yet been used. And the bond payment was used in, was paid in May, and the rest of the reserves are available for use. And so there's $558,000 that could be granted for things in October. So,
What
in
is a
addition,
UFB appropriation? I'm not familiar with that. acronym.
undesignated fund balance.
Oh, okay. That's what it is.
I
Staring
move
at
that we
3
approve the treasurer's report.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have just one point of discussion, because I'm curious to ask Ken, I haven't read the entire Massachusetts state budget, but I know that I read the email and CPC funding is getting cut either entirely or.
Oh,
by a-
right.
by a-
yeah.
Well, we're only gonna have a 20% match.
I just want to know, is that going to affect us? It's probably
Okay.
not going to affect us 2024.
Yeah.
Is that going to come
The-
in 2025?
Yes, you're, good point. I was going to mention that, but I forgot. We have been estimated 20.1%, and it's only going to be 20-ish.
Okay.
And that's going to wash out with the revenue, with the lowballing of the revenue
All
estimate.
right. So it's
It'll
not going to be
bigger.
a huge crash.
But
all
that's
of a
No.
sudden.
also not a hard number, because I don't know if you get, and if you don't, I'll make sure before we leave that everybody's email that wants it from Stuart Saginaw from the coalition, he'll send out emails
That's where I got that from. I do have that.
that they're still, he said, we're not giving up.
Yeah.
And that's happened in the past, that they in September, October will do
A supplement.
supplemental budgets that, depending on how much money they think they have. And CPC has in the past been able to get $20-30 million. That billion we wish, that's the whole state.
They have to take it out for that initial, so that it'll
Right.
pass, and then they go back and
Right,
say,
and then they say, oh yeah, we have all this extra, and then they'll try. So we may not lose all the way down to 20%, but that's what we're gonna,
butterfly. Good.
But,
bank
yeah, but
on.
based on the estimate, that'd be about $1,200 less.
All right, good.
okay. So a motion, second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimously. Let's see. So we have project updates. Eric emailed, said last minute could not come, so I don't have affordable housing, but I will, Jack, kind of let you, if you have any on the trust.
Our
Not
funds.
the trust, the rental assistant.
Yes, so we are, we don't meet in July, the Housing Authority, but we are meeting on Tuesday, next Tuesday, and it will be, I will be the chair, so I'm gonna make a point to ask, because it's only been 1 month, and we're still, I was hoping we would be in a little bit better of a position. We're getting our budget done, or like looked at next month, or next week too, so we're gonna see exactly where our tenants are at, where any shortfalls may be. The holiday season's coming up, that's typically more expensive for our tenants. We're gonna be every year we readjust and renegotiate all of our rents. So I'm gonna ask our executive director preliminarily, like, what's your plan going into this winter with these funds in mind? And I will be happy to get that report in for our next meeting.
So if you could, because I'm not real sure without talking to Mary, if there needs to be a mechanism set up so that once you find that you need $1,000, that she can then send it over and that the warrant gets processed.
Okay, that'll be a point too. Not only how we're gonna spend it, but first off, figure out how we're gonna get the money to and from, how we're gonna move it,
So
no matter
basically,
what.
it would be, she'd set up an account and it's just that she needs, that your person needs to know that it's gonna be sent. She can send it to you, send it to me, that either the treasurer or I would approve it, then the warrant would get paid. So it would say Grafton Housing Authority, not Mrs. Smith.
Exactly, yeah, there'd be
And so
an
it would send the
entity for them.
money,
Yep.
I'm sure it'd just be a check.
Oh yeah, so yeah, I will make
So
sure
it'd
to
just
bring
be
all
like
that
a
up.
regular bill that comes in for anything, so that, but we just wanna make sure that she knows the process,
Yep.
and then there'll be an account and all that kind of stuff that Beth will get to do. So,
Perfect, yep, so I will have that, next meeting all set up.
okay. I don't think, do you know any, the fill-in, backfill for Eric on affordable, you're not on affordable housing.
I am not,
right?
on- I just go to everything.
Okay. No, but, no,
I can see why you'd get confused.
no, I just didn't, I almost swore that you weren't appointed to it?
No, never.
Oh, it's like I thought I was.
I know, I could see how it's confusing, because I'm just everywhere.
No, like I say, I can't remember this. I'm guessing no archival report,
So I had talked to,
Candy?
Candy, thank you.
I can remember. a little
Senior
bit.
moment. I talked to her back in, when we last met, so was that April?
Yep.
And I haven't heard from her since. And at the time, she said she was kind of in a holding pattern because she was tied up with other things, but that she did plan to move forward and would notify us when she did.
Gotcha, okay. And I have not done anything. I did reach out, but I have not gotten any further. Joanne before she left, a gravestone workshop, and I'm like, I can't go, but, to try to talk to somebody else who can move forward on that gravestone. There's a gravestone at the Old Indian, what do we call it? Oak Street Burying Ground, that
Rich was working on.
Rich had started.
Yep.
And kind of had built a temporary shelter. And, but we really need to make a permanent, how are we gonna preserve this?
Do it better.
So, no, but that's just kind of
Yeah,
to
bought us
arrest
time.
any damage, because it prevents water from infiltrating in the top.
Is a plexiglass case, is that?
No, it's wood.
No, I know, but like, could that be?
No, because that would be even
With holes in
worse.
it?
Like, it would make a microclimate, and it would get real hot, and then it would just cause things to do things that you want it to breathe. It's a natural material, and you want it to breathe, you want it to do stuff, but sometimes they'll say, you have to choose. Do you remove it from its environment and replicate it? And that's what we'd kind of talked about.
Okay.
Then there are all these issues of who owns it, how do you get to do that, and where would it go?
Right.
You see them in museums. We could put it in the Historical Society. We could put it in a case here in the building if there's a showcase. There's all kinds of ways to preserve it without taking away the historical significance, but most of that is tied to the fact that that's where that couple is buried.
Right.
So it's like, but if you want to preserve the art, which is what we're trying to preserve, it's almost like, unless they can do some conservation that's reversible, there are glues that they can use or adhesives so that it will prevent it from popping off, because that's what's happening. It's that you'll see that in some of the markers, that half of it's just gone. Unless it's in the dirt, somebody digs and digs, you might find pieces, but, so it's just it's not an easy solution, and we've been working on this for 20 years like that.
Oh, dang. Oh, okay.
So Roger Holman, if you remember, Roger had started this, many, many years ago. Paul, comment.
The common. So, trying to finish up with the contractor. Basically, most of the punch list items are done. Big one was fixing the transition from the elevated walkway to the bandstand. It was out of code. It can't, over the distance from one side to the other, it can't vary more than I believe it was a quarter of an inch, and it was like a half inch. So it was a little high on one side. So that's been adjusted. We had some work that needed to be done with the electrical junction box just to label all of the different circuits in there so that moving forward we know what they do. They've put in the new archway at the east entrance and made that connection. Really the only, one other thing we did was switch out, or put in, I should say, what's the photo cell operation for the light inside the bandstand so that it comes on at night and goes off in the morning, same as the lamp posts that are there. That wasn't originally scoped out in the project, so we had that done.
Is that historical?
It'd have to be candlelight or whale oil or something for that, but it's all,
Bandstand wasn't there
they're all LED lights.
It was a movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, but
a
it
movie
was
from
never there until the 40s or
1930
something.
was a long time ago.
It's approaching 100 years old. It was put in 1935, I believe, was the year
So,
it was put in.
With these extra changes that were in the initial scope, which I think it makes sense. I'm not questioning that, but the question I do have is, are we having money returned from this project back to the CPC?
Yes, we should. We have about 90,000 remaining right now, but we're not done. We do have some work left to do, and I'll get to that if I can and answer that question through that. So we had that done. We did have to pay extra already because when we ordered the town ordered the granite posts to go in for the archway, they were supposed to, and we had asked them to, have those etched along the side of one of them so that the electrical conduit could be put in place. That wasn't done, It took us about 10 months to get that post, so there was no way we were going to return it to try and have that done. We had actually had the other post done in place by the contractor, so we had the contractor do that. So I have two things that we'll have to bring to the select board as a change order. One is putting in that photo cell, and the other one is carving that groove. So I'm waiting for the invoice from them for that, and then also just the final invoice for the project, so that we can close out their piece of it. There is another element that's still going on. There's two really. We are looking to put in a sign. Actually, it's kind of two signs. For one, we have the electrical box that is a brushed aluminum finish, which isn't very historic looking. And, you know, it actually got damaged, and I don't know how it happened, but it appears like rocks, small pebbles or something, were ejected out of some kind of a gas-powered device and put little pits in the front of the box, which are now rusting. So what we want to do, for two reasons: one, to not have it be brushed aluminum anymore, and two, to cover up those rusted pit marks, is to have it wrapped with a historic photo. So, or two. What we're currently proposing is to have, there's a photo that we found at the the Grafton Historical Society, that is of the common. It's of a woman dressed up like the Statue of Liberty, draped with like a red, white, and blue with stars on it, holding a torch in her hand, and then around her are a lot of children and a few adults. There was a birdhouse competition that they had done. It's the 4th of July, and you can see the archways in it. It's one of the few pictures we have where you see the original archways. So that is a photo we wanted to have on one side, and then on the other side we wanted to have a historic photo of the inn, because on that side the inn will be in the background. You can have the photo right there. So we want to do that, and then the other thing is to have a sign, which is really, you know, part of what we owe CPA for using CPA funds, is to recognize that the funds came from there. But we want something in keeping with the, you know, historic nature of the area. So we don't want something huge like is it Ebclaw or Ekblaw? Ekblaw. I never get that right. We don't want something huge like that. So we're talking about like a boulder with a bronze plaque on it. So we're in the process of working through that. And then the last thing that we still have hanging out, I mentioned the transition at the top of the elevated walkway where it meets the bandstand, that we had to do that. That was brought to our attention by a accessibility advocate who brought it to the building inspector. At the same time, he raised concerns with whether or not we had to have railings for the main entrance to the bandstand. Our thought was, you know, we just spent a lot of money making an elevated walkway to provide that access. And it's not clear to us still whether or not we do need to do that. We do know it is not a building code issue. Building code only requires those if there were 4 steps or more. This is basically 1 step and then you step into it. So at most you could call it 2. We've been in touch with the executive director of the AAB to get his input. He wouldn't talk on the phone, so we're now in the process of drafting a letter outlining the situation to him, and we'll reach out to him with that. And based on his feedback, we'll know how we have to proceed. Worst case scenario is we have to put railings in there. Whether or not they'll require just 1 on either side, whether they require 1 in the middle. I know in building code, if it was 4 steps, and because of the width of it, it would be not just the 2 on the sides, but 1 in the middle. But we have to get his input, because it's not clear in looking at the AAB guidelines. It is not clear at all. So we definitely need the benefit of his input. And based on that, we'll then decide whether or not we need to go for a variance application. And if we do that, then we'll have to go to a hearing before the AAB to see if they will approve the variance. So this is going to have a bit of a tail on it, let's put it that way. So as far as turning the funds back, we can't do that until everything's wrapped up.
Of course.
Yeah.
if we do have to go the variance route and appear before them, would that cost us money for like a filing fee, having someone paid to attend? You know, that kind of question?
Yeah, we'd have to pay for the architect to come.
Okay.
I'd have to go. I'm not gonna ask for money, but it's my time.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I just wanted to double check on that process. And then, am I correct that there's still at least one archway we need to replace, but it's not part of CPA funds, it's insurance? Is that still correct?
So, no, there isn't an archway that needs to be replaced. There's been another motor vehicle accident up there. This was another
4 or 5
errant
a year.
truck, and they didn't hit the archway directly. They hit a post, and that pushed into the post that the archway was on, and it didn't bend it or anything, but it did knock over inside the lantern itself where the light bulb mounts is now laying on its side, and it broke one of the panes of glass that is in there. So there is insurance money. I've been in touch with Evan on that, and he's actually asked Paul Canoyer to lead the charge with that, and he's already reached out to me. I've given him the information about, what the model of the lantern was and the type of glass that we used. And then he also had some questions. Apparently, some of the benches have been damaged by local residents, presumably. And there's some boards that need to be replaced on some of the benches. So I gave him the information to do that. I did also reach out, the Historic District Commission had some conversation about all the motor vehicle accidents that have been happening up there and our concerns with that. And so we asked if we could go before the Traffic Advisory Committee. They actually met right after we had sent it and discussed it while we weren't there. They've looked at it before. They really feel that it requires a new traffic study. One was done back around the time that we did the work in the front of the townhouse with the ramp and all there. So that's probably pushing 10 years ago now. So they want something updated. And as I recall from that report, it wasn't, one of the things they looked at was putting traffic lights in up there. And it wasn't felt to be needed based on the traffic study at the time. The volume wasn't enough. Well, 8 years later, maybe it is now. So I agree, it needs to be done. I know they drafted a letter and sent it to the select board. I'm not sure if they discussed it. Colleen may know because she goes to all the meetings.
I have not heard that discussed at this time.
Yeah, I haven't either. So when I do have to go before them for the change order, I'll make sure to ask about that.
Does sound like you solved the cupola problem. They'll just wrap it with a picture and then it's great. It's done.
Protect it and give it
And
the new look.
beautiful.
Do we know again, it's not part of the, CPA funded work, but do we know the nature of the damage to the benches? Like what?
I just know some boards need to be replaced.
Okay. Yeah, I was just
And they
curious.
feel it was damaged. It wasn't incidental damage. It was actually
And then
like
they're,
I think it was
purposeful.
intentional.
they're Apex or whatever you call it.
AZAC, yeah.
AZAC, right?
Yes, yeah,
So that takes a little, those are dents.
they had to work at it.
That was what I was curious on it, but okay. If that's all we know. That's all we know right now.
Yeah, you could ask Paul. He might know.
Thank you.
The other Paul Canoyer.
Okay, I didn't take this off. I should have weights and measures. That's all set.
We decided staying right
Yeah.
where it is.
It's staying right front and center
Okay.
here. And there will be some money coming back from that. I think I've kind of taken over the Lions Club project, and it's mostly finished, and they're now working on their sign.
Okay.
Recreation, I did not talk to Kristen about where they are with that, but I know I don't know if do you know if they've hired a new recreation director yet?
The last I heard, they were very close or they had. I know that there was a
'Cause I'm
really
sure
strong candidate and then I don't know where it's been.
those,
since my last
I don't know
update.
where, because there's gonna be a million things like the beach and summer, fall programs.
Got multiple
That-
programs going.
There's a lot of
Projects.
balls that she's gonna be juggling, so I don't know where that would fall, but, I think a lot of that was winding up, finishing up, so
Yeah,
I don't know where that stands. Let's see,
Think they did, but they haven't started yet, is my recollection. They think the select board just appointed them, but their official start date's like in another week or something.
okay. did you have the, Unitarian
That was
accessibility?
Paul.
Yes. So, I actually, no, they're working on, I haven't gotten anything new as far as, requests for, not refunding, but payment for funds that they've expended on the existing design project. But I do know that they are starting a capital campaign for the next phase of the project, so that they can raise some significant funds for that.
Okay. And then just to back up, because there was an email with the invoice that you got from, for the,
There was one,
so you have that.
just recently, because
Was it it was in a week, last week?
The one that I emailed you
Yeah, that one, like
last week.
last week?
I don't recall that. You emailed
It wasn't
me?
that much.
No, because we
Don't
just
worry.
got one that was, I printed out
gave
that
you
was
the-
okay to
I
pay.
took a picture.
gave me
of
one for- Yeah, that was, for the other project.
But
That
then
wasn't
there's
this.
another one.
I haven't seen anything for it. So
Not
do you
many.
still have a copy of it?
I believe I do. In
So
my
it'll be in
desk
the
across
office.
the hall.
Got it.
Okay.
So we
Do you have
need
my email address?
No.
So I'll leave it for you, so you have it.
that. Okay, I just want to make sure that didn't get lost, because you have to look at it first.
Yes, I have not seen it.
South Grafton, playground.
Yes, so first up, I've been trying to reach out to Anita for several
She's been
months now.
gone.
And then I just found out yesterday or that she was gone.
Yeah.
So that explains why, like, for almost a year now, I barely heard anything from her.
She left, I think, at the end of May. or
Yeah,
first
it was,
of June.
it's been a while that I haven't heard from her, even when she was still here, for sure. So I reached out to Dr. Cummings, and he actually got back to me today, from less than a day's turnaround. So at least he got some pictures, because I went there today. So,
Because I went yesterday, but I don't have I can't share my pictures, but at least because we were all curious
Yeah.
what's going on.
he, first said that the structure installation is going to be finalized in the next few days. Next week, they'll begin prepping the rubber floor installation. The wood fiber mulch is scheduled to be delivered and put down in mid-August. And the rubber floor installation is scheduled to be completed the week before school starts.
Can we make that bigger? That's pretty cool.
So, just by looking at it, I don't know how well you guys know the playground, but it looks like they're dividing it in half. And that the southernmost half, they've got a new structure that if you go back to the first picture, you can actually see there's a fence. They put in a new fence, so they're gonna have to cut through that fence, but you can see there's a ramp that's gonna make that accessible so the kids, because it probably goes down about 12 feet
Yep.
from the blacktop to the surface of the playground, so that they will be able to go straight out, like a lot of the kids are in wheelchairs that would use this, that they could go out on that, or the kids that are mobility impaired could go through that and be on that upper level. And then the bottom underneath of that, all the mulch has been taken away and it's just dirt, so I'm assuming that's where all the rubberized surface will go.
That was my understanding as well, yes.
I remember when I went there, that was just a ditch. So
Yeah, there's still a ditch on the other.
yeah, it's just nice to see some structures there.
You can see there's a big, I couldn't get down there because it's all blocked
Yeah.
off, but you can see that box. I'm guessing that's gonna be drainage of some kind because there's a lot of
Yeah.
water that
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
through there and it makes little rivers in the mulch, so.
Yeah, that's what it is,
To
my
take away
almost
the-
certain answer on that, so. Yeah, I was impressed with how fast he got back to it with everything else he juggles, but I was very appreciative of that.
Yeah, no, but we were, again, with that, being able to really get into it, that looked like a really neat little play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kids are gonna love it.
Yeah, that's neat.
Right, and that's all I have on this one, other than to say, I still have not seen a single invoice from it. I know there was one that I guess was paid when Anita was still
Right.
here. I don't know if there's been any others paid, but,
There's no more money. I think they spent it all.
okay. Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure, but I wanted to just call out that I've never seen any of the invoices, so.
Okay. Have you talked to Ray? Because I tried to, and it's like on my phone, it doesn't pop, names don't pop up. I have to get on my laptop for it to work. My laptop's not happy right now.
Ray Mead or Ray Gould?
Ray Gould.
I have not spoken with her since her last message that they were still going to, I was thinking I was gonna reach out to her probably September, October to see, where they are, so we can try to, if they're ready for it, to try to have something in time for our Maytown meeting.
Because I drove by the other day, and there's a big dumpster, so I don't know what, like, there's somebody doing something work-wise, but the house looked good.
Yep. Yeah, I was planning on reaching out to her again, like I said, September, October, to, see where they
Yep.
stand.
Okay. I'm not real sure about 95 North Street.
So Leah sent you the email.
Right, that I've
in
gotten some
July.
invoices that they're starting.
Yeah, I just got another invoice yesterday that
Right.
I approved and stuff, so they're going out to bid. And so that's where it is, and the only other thing is that DPW has been doing a lot of the upfront work, so that's ongoing.
Because I saw, like, it looks like there was a trail kind of cleared. But
Yeah.
They could probably get into the back of the
Yeah,
property.
and they're trying to, the next step is to do the invasive removals, and that's so
Is that
conservation
something you
staff.
wait for winter, or do you do it while it's growing?
Depends upon what it is, and so there's different things. I mean, any kind of invasive removal plan is really a 10 to 20 year thing, and it's almost nonstop.
Right.
But there's different ways of doing it. Some of it is purely cutting it. Some of it is, super invasive where you take all the dirt out. That's not what's going to happen. A lot of it is you cut and dab, meaning you actually take the stems and you dab it with pests, with the weed killer and so forth. So there's a whole procedure around that.
Right.
You have to be certified to do it, and so it's interesting. But it depends upon what the invasive plant is and how aggressive it is. So.
And then for Robinson property, the property is closed, and what can you tell us about the baselines? Because
Well, I can tell you, the Land Trust has decided that they're going to do it in-house.
okay, that's what it was.
Right, and so, I guess somebody raised the question of, does that still qualify for the grant?
Well, it's, whoever
not-
that does it, they
it's not-
send us a bill.
Yeah, so it's not going to be done by a consultant, it's gonna be done,
Well, if we get the baseline report that meets the requirements of conservation or whatever group that says yes, then
and so.
have them send us the bill.
And so either there won't be any bill, or it would be the Land Trust sending the bill, would that
Right.
be appropriate?
If they're doing the work, I don't know why not.
I'll relate
Because
that.
it doesn't specify that it needs to be by XYZ consultant, but if you have people that are qualified to do whatever it is that's being
Yeah,
done
yeah.
and creating the document that will bind this
Yeah.
property, then
Okay.
I
Usually
don't.
an attorney.
Okay, so the timing of it is that it could not begin until the property closed, which it just happened a month or so ago.
Okay.
And so the project will now be active.
And a question that I also have is that I'm still and I don't know how much of our land it includes, I'm seeing for sale signs, and I'm guessing they're old for sale signs.
Along that
on
street,
On on Upton Street.
those for sale signs are for the last two lots. This tranche, the one that we just bought, was half of a 4-lot piece. And so 2 of the lots were bought, but with that money, and there's 2 lots that remain for sale.
And do we want those two lots?
We absolutely do.
And
The town.
he's
yes,
waiting to get a buyer, which I think you said, or somebody said.
Will never
A
happen.
buyer's not gonna do it because they're not gonna go through all that to then only have the rug pulled
That's
out from
correct.
under.
And so those lots will never sell. They will
So
likely
that's what-
never sell.
Cause they're further down and probably
There's been some discussion about the town
approaching.
Ali and, going through a process with an appraiser. But that's not started yet.
Right,
So, but,
and there's no rush either.
no, yeah, there isn't a rush, not in particular, no.
Okay, all right.
Is the person that's gonna do the baseline report an attorney?
No, but it's
It's a prescriptive,
yeah.
it's
I'm sure there's
prescriptive. I mean,
boilerplate
there's
It's actually
examples
going to
and
be
stuff.
structured almost exactly like the one for
The
the other
others.
2 lots that were done a
So you
few
got a
years ago.
Yeah, there's guidelines and so forth. I mean, I mean, Concom usually sends it to the town council for review because we're not attorneys.
Yeah, typically, these reports are sent for review before they're accepted. anyway, and so that would still be the case.
Okay.
And besides, the state is the reviewer the ultimate reviewer is the state. And so if the state accepts it, then it's accepted.
Yeah, well, you don't have to, but those are
Okay.
the properties, but.
And a nod to Jim Gallagher. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Jim would usually say that. I said that to somebody an hour
Be the
ago.
first one to say it.
Yep.